You know, one of the great equalizers in the modern world is access to technology. We don't think about it so much here in Atlanta because we have it. But when you don't, just think about leaving your phone at home and how cut off you feel from the world. Imagine living somewhere where there is no access to technology. Well, there are companies working to fix that. We've got Rob Loud on the phone with us right now. He is the CEO of a company trying to do exactly that, Imcon International. Rob, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So listen, give me a little background on the company before we get into some of the current projects.
Well, the short version of it would be the idea of the Internet Backpack was born out of a professor at Syracuse University several years ago, specifically for emergency situations when communication systems go down. How do your response workers communicate and effectively save lives and make sure there's an appropriate response? And about 15 months ago, he and I were speaking, and I looked at it and had the idea, or they had done some things, and we looked at it and said, I think we can commercialize this into instead of just being in one segment, we can take this technology, expand the idea or scope and use case of what it was built for, and take it and do a lot of good in the world with it, not just one little section. Don't get me wrong, saving lives, fantastic thing.
Of course.
But there was so much more we could do if we brought information and the internet to places that it's never been before.
Okay, so let me make sure I get this straight. So initially the idea behind the Internet Backpack was we're going to use this when there is a crisis happening. This is for an emergency situation so that responders have access and that type of thing. And that's where the idea came from, to go broader and do some things like I was saying at the intro to the segment, bringing, and as you said, technology to places where it just hasn't been.
Correct. That is exactly the path that it occurred on.
So now I want to get a little techie nerdy. So for the listeners who aren't quite as nerdy, just stay with me. Sometimes I can't help myself. Can you explain a little bit about how this even works?
Well, it's pretty easy, really. What our system, we attack it from a couple different pieces. What we looked at, one, was we wanted it to be completely mobile. You know, there are Pelican cases or big briefcases or barrels of things that different groups can deploy. We wanted a mobile solution that literally could strap to your back and you could take anywhere.
Okay.
So thus the backpack. Then the other issue we looked at was power. In a lot of places in the world, power is, as we know it, is a luxury. You don't have AC power on your walls 24 hours a day. Or if you're hiking or any other cases, there may be a situation where there's no power to plug into.
Right.
So we built in a power system that's a rechargeable system. It will run our equipment for about 24 hours. So I would tell most people 8 hours for 3 days is what it can do without recharging all the devices.
Okay.
The recharge system can be done through a standard wall socket AC, but that's not what we built for. So then we also it has the ability to charge from a DC outlet from a car vehicle, because those are plentiful, even in remote areas, some in a rescue situation, for instance.
Yep.
Or in a place, in several like where we are currently, we include a solar panel in the backpack that allows the battery to charge and completely charge, or if it needs to be used while it's charging, it does a trickle charge so it doesn't charge as fast, but it extends the life before the battery would need a complete charge without anything running.
That is really cool.
So then, as far as the connection types, we have a device in there, I'll just call it a router. It looks at all the devices or all of the connection types available that are built into the backpack, which it could connect to an Ethernet system, which you're not usually going to find in a remote location.
Right.
It could ad hoc to a Wi-Fi system if there was one, if needed or available. Once again, probably not applicable, but it can do it.
Okay.
Then we can connect at any time between 1 and 4 cellular networks. We can run 4 SIMs. So here in the U.S., just for a visual, you can run AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile.
Right.
And what our system does is looks at all of those, and then the last failover connection is a small satellite that works off the Inmarsat system, which allows us to cover 95% of the planet. So I can effectively tell you, I can bring you internet access on 95% of the planet where there typically is none, and there is no available other power source.
Wow.
And so what our system does, and what we try to do, and what our real mission is providing an internet online experience to, regardless of where you're at in the world, anytime. So if you're in Timbuktu, it works. If you're in Atlanta, it works. Now, what it does is looks at all those various communication protocols and types and looks at them and says, which one's the best right now? So let's say one of the four carriers is, because I don't want to play preferences.
So it's
they don't like that.
Is it going to find? I don't want to cut you off because I feel like I could get into the weeds with this because it's fascinating. Yep. But so basically, is it going to find the fastest one, the quickest, the cheapest one, the quickest?
It looks at all of those factors, and the fastest isn't always the best one for what the user is doing.
Okay.
So it uses a set of algorithms that looks at what our users are trying to do, basically. Are they going to a news site? Are they going to the weather? Or is there it looks at all these different factors and constantly is putting them on the best connection possible.
Got it.
So one moment the user could be on one phone carrier and switch to the satellite. And so if in a case if the backpack was actually moving, as we all know, when you drive around, your cell carriers and which ones change quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what we found, obviously, is in other places in the world, it's not as easy as it is here in the U.S. for most systems to switch back and forth. So we've tried to deal with all those so a user gets the best connection, typically what will provide them the best online service, as well as looks at what cost is available or what cost structure is available in those.
So I know you're working. We're almost out of time, Rob. I don't want to interrupt you, but we're almost out of time, and I want to ask you about Costa Rica in particular because I know you guys are working there. Talk to me just briefly about what you're doing in Costa Rica and how it's going to help there.
So they have a directive there from their new president to get all the education system online with a central system. Right now, all the schools are connected to, or the schools that are connected to various ISPs. There's no central network.
Okay.
So Dr. Alvaro Castro from the Democracy Lab in Costa Rica approached us and said, hey, can you guys help us? So we're working through him in a private public partnership down there, along with the Ministry of Education, to our system. Our backpacks are going to be used in the remote areas where there are no infrastructures currently, to be that piece where they can get a school that's never had internet on till some point the incumbents can get a typical Ethernet or signal out there. So we're going to partner with them to make sure all the schools in the country have internet access, can tie back to whatever their educational curriculum is, and then start involving other things. We want to work with the entrepreneurial opportunities to make sure the backpack that's there and can connect, it doesn't have to be turned off at 3 o'clock. There may be people there that want to access the internet and do other things. So we're really hoping to work with the Democracy Lab to bring various opportunities, both for the education, entrepreneurs, and just information in general, because when your people don't have access to information, lots of things can go wrong.
Yeah. Listen, Rob, I have chills because that is such amazing stuff. I'm so impressed, and I can't wait to hear how much more you guys are able to do with this. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on the phone today. That was Rob Loud, CEO of Imcon International. They're working on that internet backpack. They're working now in Costa Rica. We'll post a link to it so you can read more about it, but just imagine the possibilities that technology can bring to the world. It's phenomenal. Very cool to have on.